Welcome to the Blue Collar Startup, the podcast where hard work meets big ideas. This is your home for real talk, real stories, and real strategies from the front lines of life and the business of the trades. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media. Doing the show solo today. If you watched last week's episode, which would be Bill Tansey from the OpEx Shop, I think, if that's the order. We were actually recording two episodes today. I'm doing them both solo because Dee's out having a baby. So baby number 3 for Derek. We're really excited for him and them, and congratulations to everybody. I got a note from him with a picture of the baby, so it sounds like everybody's happy and healthy, and we're super excited for those guys. So I'll just kind of rolling through the episode today. So no witty banter for Derek and I to start off the episode, but I do want to talk a little bit real quick about a couple things. One, if you're haven't listened in a while, but you listened to the show the last few years, we just rolled out some new episode formats at the beginning of this year. Today we're doing an interviews from the field, which is where we're talking to men and women that are working directly in the trades, in the field every day. Sometimes they're business owners, sometimes they're managers, sometimes they're foremen, project managers, you name it. We're trying to make sure we get a little bit from everybody out there. We also have our Women's in the Trades episodes with guest host Stacy Spector from Catamount Consulting. We've actually got one of those coming up next week. Pretty excited about that. We also bring the team in from Catamount Consulting, do a little roundtable discussion on some different things, whether that be growth mindset stuff, leadership, safety training, all the things that they kind of operate in. And we're really fortunate for them to be able to spend some time with us doing that. And then, of course, last but not least, we've got the LAB Lab. We've got the Let's Ask Bill episodes that we've been putting together, and that's with Bill Tansey from the OpEx Shop. Bill's been gracious enough to spend some time with us here and kind of give us some of the inside baseball as far as how he works with companies and some of the tips and tricks and things that he does to help companies grow and scale. So really enjoy all of our formats. And, I laugh about Bill's episodes because I feel like I'm getting a bunch of free consulting from him, but some free coaching. But so check those out. And of course, each episode we're doing roughly a 30-minute main episode. And then for our Patreon subscribers, which there'll be a link in the show notes. You can jump on over and check out what we've got going on Patreon. That side of the program really is we try to get usable, actionable information for our people in the trades, whether they're trying to be successful in their role, they're trying to build and grow and scale blue collar business. That Patreon side is really where we're getting into some of the finer points of the things that we talk about here on the main episode. So check it out. Please, join membership. It's a whopping $5 a month. Well worth the kind of content and stuff that we're putting in there. So please jump on over there. And of course, we've got sponsorship opportunities available. If you are one of the people listening, that we raise money to help donate to BOCES programs, HBCC that we call the Blue Collar College. They've got a bunch of great trade programs. And one of the things we do with this show is to raise money for those programs to help kids with tools and tuition. So, we've got some amazing sponsors that I'm going to list out here in a minute. But if, you'd like to get involved and like to help to get some of that support out there for these kids, reach on out to us. I'll make sure Taylor puts the email address in the show notes as well. So, and speaking of sponsors, got to give just a quick shout out to our sponsors. We've got Nick and the crew over at Peopleese, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Michael's Group, Catamount Consulting, of course, Scott and Stacy, as I mentioned, they do so much to help the show. The Northeast Construction Trades Workforce Coalition, Pam and Doug over there doing some amazing work on getting kids interested in the trades and trying to make that happen earlier than later. And of course, Derek's team over at Daigle Cleaning Systems and my team over at Five Towers Media. Appreciate everybody's support for all the different things that you do, not just the monetary support, but the connections and introductions. And it's just amazing. And, teamwork makes the dream work. So thanks, everybody. All right, and without further ado here, let's get our guest on here. Rick, how are we, man?
Oh, real good. I appreciate you having me on and excited to do this.
Yeah, me too. Of course, I'll have you introduce yourself, but it's Peckham's one of those companies. I mean, you guys are all over the place, and I think it's hard pressed for people, at least locally anyway, that haven't heard of Peckham. So, Rick, why don't you just go ahead and tell us who you are, tell us a little bit about Peckham and what you guys are up to.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So my name's Rick Engelhardt. I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio, my whole life. Went to college at Youngstown State University for industrial engineering and mechanical engineering. Started working for General Electric early on in my career, and that helped, I think, build a great base for me and a foundation. Uh, I had found myself at some point in time in Ohio, the lighting business was closing down, and wanted something I thought would be a little bit, around for a while, and that I wouldn't have to switch jobs back and forth, closing plant to closing plant. So I got into GE Aviation up in Rutland, Vermont, and that's what brought me up here. And then during COVID, I ended up leaving GE and coming to Peckham Industries. As far as Peckham's concerned, Peckham operates in 5 New England states: Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Vermont, and New York. Uh, Pretty much from cradle to grave, right? So from quarries and the land that we manage, all the way to finished projects, road construction, parking garages. In my case, aggregates is a huge part of our business. We own somewhere in the lines of 45 to 50 quarries, I'm pretty sure, at the current time frame.
Wow.
It's a vertically integrated company. So from the quarries all the way through to finished products, we can help control our destiny, cost, quality, and send our culture in the direction that we prefer. And I think that's a big piece of who we are as a company.
Yeah. And I noticed you guys celebrated your 100th year anniversary a couple years ago in 2024, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir, we did.
That is wild. 100 years.
Yeah, not too many companies with 100 years. I think it's a testament to the Peckhams and what
Yeah.
they built. And they have a thing in Peckham where if we want to be in control of our destiny, we do that through growing, whether that's organic growth or whether it's acquisitions. But we're always looking to grow and continuously trying to improve. So that's part of who we are and our identity. And I think it's been a great success and a great corner of the success of the company.
Yeah. It's wild because when I was doing some prep, getting ready for the show and looking at Peckham as an organization and not just the geographic footprint and like you said, like the 40 quarries that they own, but just the whole system, like the whole way that they do their business. And I love the whole, going from, as you said, cradle to grave, right? Like going from the quarry all the way to you're putting it down on the roads or using it in projects, of just owning every step of that process is just wild to me. So that all of that stuff put together, really excited to get into some of this stuff. And Rick, real quick, what's your role inside of Peckham?
So I am the plant manager at Daily Precast. We're focused on parking garages. So we've done in the past, bridge beams and Rico panels and stuff. But the core of our business, where we really, can bring the most value to the company Peckham, the umbrella
Hmm.
of the Peckham companies, is really parking garages for us. It enables us to get a lot of volume in and keep the status quo as far as the amount of people we have employed and covering the overhead that we need to.
Now, is that company wide that you guys focus a lot on parking garages?
No, so like I said, we're actually like the I would say the smaller 10% part of the business. Most of
Okay.
what Peckham Industries does is the quarrying, aggregates, and road construction,
Yeah.
and hot mix asphalt. So we're
Okay.
we're we're not the main focus of the business, but nevertheless, we operate 365 days a year. So I think they like to have that diversity in the company. That it, pays the bills when everything else isn't. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and it's funny because you started saying that I was like, holy moly! I'm like, they operate that larger footprint just on parking garages. Like, I had no idea that there was that many opportunities for building parking garages.
Mostly our focus is along the coast, obviously, where
Yeah.
you don't have room to build to the left and to the right, you go up. So that's where a lot of our focus is at. Obviously, some inner city places, any of the Springfield, Mass, Syracuse, and whatnot, and any of those areas in the inner city areas is where most of these garages end up going up.
And I know this is a little off topic, but I'm just so interested in this. Have you noticed that there's been an increase in demand for parking garages over, say, the last decade? Because and maybe it's just because of what I see locally, but parking just seems to be at a premium wherever you go. And feel like I see more and more and more parking garages going up. And, it used to be something we'd see in mostly more metropolitan areas, but now we see them in Glens Falls, New York. We see them in Saratoga. We see them in communities that are a lot smaller than I ever remember seeing them before.
So the architects nowadays are trying to challenge the status quo. They want to match the environments around where these garages are at.
Yep.
So whether it's doing brickwork, they're really trying to push the status quo for that. So we do architectural precast. I'm sorry, structural precast, but with an architectural finish on it. So a lot
Okay.
of our work when you go down the highway, it is very impressive looking. As far as the demand, I can't really speak to it because I've only been in the industry for about 5 years.
Okay.
Much of my focus hasn't been on the business end of it. But I would say that, the last couple of years have been a little slower for us. But I would say what you're talking about as far as parking garages being more of it's a commodity, but a necessary commodity to some
Hmm.
fact, right? As these areas along the coast are growing, like I said, you got to go up. So that's much of what we're here to do is to, like I said, stay focused on the parking garages, and it allows us to operate optimally for us.
Yeah. And so as a plant manager and specializing in the parking garages, what does that typical day to day look like for you? Like what kinds of things are you working on or what does your job entail?
A lot of it's people management. So, being a manager of managers, you're trying to, you know, forge a strategic plan, and then you got to break that down to what is everybody's part in that.
Hmm.
So, I start my day typically with production meeting. I pulse, what happened from the time I left the day before. We cure our pieces overnight and strip them out of the formwork. So, largely, what was the quality of the pieces getting pulled out of the forms? Reviewing that, any safety issues. Safety is one of the core values at Peckham Industries. So that's a large focus on a daily basis for me, is to make
Hmm.
sure everything we pick up here is heavy, large equipment, and safety is at a premium. You can't achieve your goals if you're sending anybody home to their families not in perfect shape, right? So
Yeah.
it's just something we keep a constant focus on. I'm really happy to see in this company we have a we call it Peckham Engagement Program. It's a BBS based system, behavior based safety, where it gives people a platform and the ability to have conversations. Where if you just walked up to somebody, you may not feel so comfortable giving them a suggestion, especially if you're newer or younger and you see something that maybe looks a little risky. It gives you a platform to work off of that's supported by management, by the company.
Hmm.
And so we try to get as many of our frontline leaders this year. I have a big push with our managers to try to get frontline leaders more involved, and to really have the courage to speak up. And that kind of comes into to Scott and Stacy's message of above the line. A lot of these conversations, it may be with somebody who doesn't always see your perspective the way that you do. But
Hmm.
I always try to tell people, if you can remain calm, cool, collective, transparent, respectful, all the words that you would use to resemble what good communication looks like, right? Good, healthy communication. That's what we're really aiming to do. We're aiming to have healthy conversations with people to improve our stance as far as safety. So that's a large focus of mine during the day, is to make sure that we're building that culture, building that environment of good leaders that have a good head on their shoulders, that can stay calm in tense situations and help guide people in the right direction.
Interesting. And,
Um,
and
so, but getting on with the rest of the day. So typically start my day with that meeting. Uh, Usually after that, I got a lot of meetings nowadays. I'm finding it's my schedule. I used to never have to work off of an Outlook schedule. I would be lost without it now. I wouldn't have
yeah.
remembered to get on this today, right? So
Yeah.
I got I am constantly on the Outlook schedule. I do quite a bit with Peckham and the Peckham Way tour that we do, which is essentially saying, hey, here's where we come from, here's where we're trying to go. This isn't anything new for us. We've been growing from 1924 all the way to 2026. And we're going to, and our path forward is to continue to grow, to continue to be in charge of our destiny, in charge of our costs, having quality, be in control. These are all the things that growing and not letting somebody else take you over enable you to do, but still being genuine to yourself. Peckham's
Hmm.
acquired a lot of small businesses, and we still want them to be, have a lot of pride in their individual business unit, but still feel a family of Peckham too. And I think they've done a really good job. I think that's a really hard spot for a lot of companies to hit. And I think they found the magic formula. And it really just comes from a genuineness of good leadership. And I think that we have a ton of really great leaders that are really good people leaders and understand this message. And really just trying to cascade it down and get everybody else, to buy in and get involved. And really, it's all about engagement, right? You can plan all you want, but at some point, you got to act and you got to do. And being a leader, that means getting out there and getting in front of people and talking to them and let them know what the expectations are and how they're doing compared to those expectations. So, getting out there in the day, I keep on going off my day here. I get a little sidetracked as we talk, but typically, trying to, after a couple other meetings, probably they're scheduled through the day. Later on the day, we have a pour schedule meeting. That's where we're really trying to set the pace of, okay, we're going to have everything set up by X time. We're going to start pouring concrete. That's going to give us optimally around, 8 to 10 hours where we want to see our concrete curing. We run an SCC concrete, self-consolidating. So it has the characteristics of more flowability to it, but also accelerated curing as well too. So we're curing panels and stripping them out of forms in anywhere between 8 to 12, but preferably 8 to 10 hours.
Hmm.
So we're pulling them out of form work and whatnot. So I still do that pour schedule meeting right around after lunch. Then typically after that, it's follow up on other topics. I really run off of Stephen Covey's, I call it Covey's Cup, where in my day, I have the big important things that are going in the cup first.
Yeah.
Then I'm filling in with stone, and then I'm filling with sand at the end. I really want to make sure that I'm mission focused, that I'm setting our team up for success. At this point, it's not so much about what I am individually doing as a contributor, but how am I setting my team up for success? So I try to keep that focus on that. And it's been working well. I'm really proud of what we built here, and been showing off the plant the last couple of weeks and our efforts towards a good 5S, good housekeeping, and just what good leadership looks like and what you see in the plant. When we bring customers in here, I want them to be able to see that the attention that you want to the product quality and safety out on a job site when they're erecting here, you're going to see that same safety in our plant. And I feel like it's a good sales pitch when people walk through and they see the mock-ups that we do, which is essentially a small sample that shows a ton of different features on one piece of what you're going to get final product.
Hmm.
And that's our opportunity to show them who we are and who they're doing business with, and that we're a disciplined workforce that stays consistent in their practices and has standards that they try to meet every day that we work. So that's a large part of what I'm trying to do and build a team that can be successful long after I'm gone. So that's kind of what my day looks like in general. Of course, every day gets a little hectic. Things happen. Hopefully no safety injuries though. And
Right.
that's really what I keep a large focus on, is making sure that if something's happening, that we're reporting it timely, that if there's breakdowns with machinery, that we're on top of it, trying to make sure that we can still be productive and working with our leaders to grow themselves too and take on a lot of these tasks.
So I know you've got an engineering background. You sound very regimented and very disciplined. And maybe it's the engineer in you, right? That likes a good process.
Yeah.
Um, is that Have you always been that way, or is that something that you have learned over time as far as being structured and disciplined? And
Um, I never knew it was like a highlight lever of mine in life. I'm kind of I never think of myself as anything great. My boss, tells me all the time, you're a great leader. And I'm like, I'm okay. I try to stay humble. I think it's just the way I was raised. I am aware that it's probably a strong point of mine, but what was your question one more time? I want to make sure I'm
well,
hitting it right on the point.
yeah, yeah,
We're
yeah.
getting a little bit
Well,
tangential here, I think.
that's all right. No, you're fine. I just, as we're talking and you're just the language you're using and talking about your day, like you sound
It's
like you're very regimented and focused. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering if that's like, I know a few engineers and a lot of them are like that because they're built that way. And then I know some that they kind of just because they're engineers, they had to learn to be that way over time. And I'm just wondering if that was something you learned at Peckham or if that's just something that's through your
No,
career arc. Or...
that discipline I think has been with me always. That's what I was trying to get to is I think it's always been with me. I've never knew that it was there. Like I think I'm aware nowadays that it's there, but I always believe that like there's two words that kind of you can't really separate, and that's discipline and consistency. Because I have a hard time saying that you're disciplined if you can't be consistently disciplined. So for me, from my father, to be quite honest, I was
Mhm.
really blessed to have great parents growing up that really put a lot of attention to raising their sons to have good integrity and good attributes in a professional career. So, I was pushed, I was challenged, the bar was always held high. And I can remember times when I would tell my dad things like, how come it feels like my friends' fathers don't push them that hard?
Ah.
To be this type of guy. And he always just simply said, like, Ricky, it's lonely on top of the hill. You're going to find that the things that you should be doing, not everybody's going to be doing. But staying disciplined and consistent, I don't know. It's just in my blood. It's just I'm a I'm a habit of repetition. I like to be doing the same things. I do my laundry on the weekends. I get home from work. I do the same things every day, and sometimes it feels boring. As I've grown, I've learned that boring is the least of my problems. And if all you got to worry about is being bored sometimes, yeah, that's not a bad thing. That comes with being disciplined and consistent, and you just gotta keep your keep your attitude positive and your outlook on your horizon positive. And yeah, that's all I have to say about that. I could probably go on and on and on, but I don't necessarily know what the formula is there for my success with it. I wake up and I do my thing every day. I make sure I get to work, and like I said, that Covey's cup thing of like I make sure I put the important things first and prioritize those first. Everything else falls after, and if I can get some extra things done, great. But I try to make sure I'm hitting the big three every day and keep my focus more narrow. There was a manager I had at one point in time that had told me, I'd rather see you focus a mile deep and an inch wide than a mile wide and an inch deep across. And that really has stuck with me forever. And that you really make progress when you stay focused on something. I am not a believer in multitasking. You may have many things going on in a period of time, uh, but you're probably being focused on one or two of those at any point in time, and more than likely just one. And yeah, you might jump offline with one, get into another, and I think people call that multitasking. Uh,
Right.
but a lot of times, what I find is the best work I get done is intense blasts with extreme focus. And that's when I get my best work done, and that's when I'm getting the mass majority of my responsibilities off my plate and complete for that day or whatever range I'm looking at. And I've noticed that as well too. That my range, being the role that I'm at now, I used to think day to day, maybe week to week. Now I think in the past of what's still lingering that needs to be complete, and into the future about a month to set us up for success. Sometimes even longer than that to set us up for success, depending on what we have on the plate. We've
Mhm.
recently in the last couple of years had some really big capital expense projects, and there was a year's worth of planning ahead of time to make those successful with no injuries, because it's got
Yeah.
to be with no injuries to be successful. So
It's Oh, and I should say too, it for our listeners, if you're not familiar with Stephen Covey, the author, he's written a bunch of great books. And I'm very familiar with the cup story that you're talking about, and I won't try to tell it because I'm sure I'll mess it up. But I'm sure there's a YouTube video out there somewhere
yeah,
that if you Google Stephen Covey cup story, I'm sure it'll pop up. And I do love that as a process or a system on how to look at things and what you should be working on first. And it definitely is. I mean, Stephen Covey, he's just brilliant. He's some amazing, amazing stuff.
him and
Uh,
Napoleon Hill are two of the folks that I got an hour long drive to work. So I put it on and I started doing that self improvement, listening to it, and I can't tell you how much that helped me in so many different ways.
yeah, yeah, I believe that we've talked about Think and Grow Rich a couple times on this show. Um, it's funny that you bring him up too, because I always think about the 3 more feet that he talks about with as far as like digging for diamonds.
Yeah.
And I always think about that when I'm meeting with resistance or obstacles in my business. I think about I just got to dig 3 more feet, man, and see what we can see. And
Never quit.
what's that?
Never quit.
Never quit. Never quit.
Yeah.
I don't, I think I'm just so stubborn. I think I get lucky from that standpoint is no matter how bad things get, I just keep moving because I'm so stubborn. But I don't know if it's good or bad in all situations. But um, so, I wanted to, you had mentioned some stuff before we started recording, and I thought it was valuable to touch on it. And it is something that we've been talking a bit about in recent episodes on the show. This morning with Bill Tanzi from the OpEx shop, we were talking about it. Obviously, with Stacy and Scott, a lot of conversations with those guys. So you had mentioned, and not to turn this into a commercial for Stacy and Scott, but I do love those guys and I love what they do. You had mentioned Stacy and
They
Scott.
deserve a little kickback. It's okay.
What's that?
They deserve a little kickback. It's okay.
Yeah. Send
We
me some
like them.
checks, guys. Send me some checks. But you had talked about them coming in and doing leadership, and you talked about a few different leadership things that you're doing inside of Peckham. And I guess so. I've got a few questions on that, and one of the questions I had for you was, I assume that's something that Peckham sponsors, or they do a lot of training for you guys with people like Stacy and Scott.
They do. Really, it's up to us at the plant. Of what we got them engaged. That was not a Peckham thing as much as it
Okay.
was. They're local to us here in the
Yep.
Bennington, Southern Vermont area. So we didn't really have any Peckham engagement to bring them in. They may do work with other Peckham sites. I'm not quite sure about that. Maybe Scott has mentioned it, and I just am not recollecting.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we brought them in, and the message for us was like, hey, I've been kind of, like I said, saying this. We could have any conversation that we want, but we got to stay respectful while we're doing it. We got to have prompt conversations. We got to use candor in the way that we speak with each other, and we got to have connections and engagement with the people around us. So, once we brought them in, we had some crew leader trainings that we were doing, and one of the modules is going to be to have them come in, because really that's what really wraps everything that we're trying to do together, right? We want to give them some information on HR and legal stuff and how to manage through projects and all the different things that build a really good leader. But one of the most important ones is how to communicate, how to be engaged with people, and how to be influential. Because as a leader, your biggest role is to be influential to others and show them what good looks like, and then get them on the path and on the track to being it themselves. So.
And is that drive for, you know, really personal and professional development, is that's coming from you as the plant manager, that you want to see your people grow, you want to see your team grow?
I don't want to discount Peckham to any degree. Just this specific case, we didn't have a link with Peckham to get to Scott and Stacy, but
Yeah.
they put a lot of different. We have a managers development program, emerging leaders program. We have a executive leadership right now that I'm doing with. We have some of our board of directors do an executive leadership through the Dutchess Chamber of Commerce. So there's that they promote as well too. Really a lot of leadership trainings, a lot of safety trainings. So they're involved with a ton of it. I would say though, when it comes to this message, this was probably a lot of me and how I prefer to run a plant. What I prefer the culture to be is, I want a plant that has good people with good attitudes, that have great intentions, good integrity. They show up to work. They want to work as a team. They want to continuously improve themselves and their environment and the people around them. And I've just found that through my years working with General Electric and working with, Peckham, as far as I have, that really, if you can create a really good team that gets synergies going, that ball, when it gets rolling, it makes a huge impact on the bottom line. And, I think that we do a great job as a company for strategic planning from the top all the way down. And it starts with Big Peckham and the board and the CEO. And they say, hey, here's the path that we're on. So we call that the Peckham 300 for us. So that's getting to $300 million in EBITDA by 2030, I believe it is. And I think we're at like 160 currently, maybe a little bit more than that. So, they do a great job of saying, hey, these are our goals. And then that cascades down to the business unit. And then that cascades from my boss, the general manager, down to myself and the other managers that report into him. And it just creates this good alignment of strategic planning. And then what do we have to do to put our piece of the pie in and to add value to the big company goal? And I think that's extremely important, that you set goals as an organization and you cascade from top down. Like many things, it starts at the top, and if it fizzles its way out by the time it gets to you, then you're probably not implementing it down at my level. So I think it's a great thing that they have this foresight of what really makes you achieve your goals. And a lot of that for us is, for as the individual, is setting yearly goals, challenging the people around you, working on teams to create these synergies to do things that would be hard to do on your own, but as a team you can achieve together, and keeping a really positive attitude along the way, and keeping your head high and keeping your goals high, and try to actually strive and reach something. I don't want to set goals that you can roll out of bed and get over the bar. I want to set goals that, you got to put a little energy into it, and at the end of the day, I think everyone would agree that those are, when you meet goals that you have to put a little extra into, the outcome at the end feels amazing, not just for you, for the team, for the company, for everybody. So,
Yeah. And one of the reasons why I wanted to take us down this, especially after our pre-show conversation, is I just think that, and I think that, well, Peckham sounds like they are really embodying this message, is that if businesses really want to grow, they need to educate themselves and their people, and personally and professionally, right? And you said it too, like that education has a direct impact on the bottom line, right?
yeah, we do the Peckham Way tour. I think I don't know if I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's essentially bringing folks in and telling them, like I said, this is where we started at, this is how we got to where we're at, this is where we're going, and it's all the same game plan. It's growth.
Yeah.
It's having this mindset of continuous improvement. So I think I may have interrupted you there, though. I'll let you go.
No, not at all. That's what I was probably talking more than I should have.
No,
but that's, one of the things I would love to help our listeners understand, and it's one of the reasons why we're doing some roundtable episodes with Scott and Stacy at Catamount Consulting, is because the value of leadership training and what the skills that it gives people and other personal and professional development that's out there, whether it's growth mindset, leadership, all of it. It's, to me, having been a bit of a geek about for it for the last 20 years, it's just so valuable, and trying to help our listeners understand that, like, regardless of what size your organization you are, obviously, someone that's listening can easily say, like, well, Peckham's got some pretty deep pockets. Look at how big they are. They got, and it's understandable. Yes, I get it. Right. They have the means probably more than, say, a 5 or 6 person operation. But I don't think that discounts the need for that 5 to 6 person operation to at least start getting into some of this education, and I mean, there's so many opportunities out there. There's a reason why there's a ton of training out there available, right? Because there's a real need.
Everything that we do is trying to affect a couple of different groups of people, right? We're trying to affect the people that are potential employees to us, correct, and future employees, our
Mm-hmm.
communities, our customers, and to do a good job with our products. Right? So everything that we do and all the training that we put in, everything is really, at the end of the day, to serve those groups of people and our end product, which speaks to us as a company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, the training aspect kind of comes back to the old saying, and I'm going to mess it up, so I apologize, but it's people say that they can't afford to train their people, and the answer is always like, how can you afford not to?
Yeah.
Right? Like, you want to grow as an organization, you need people's skill sets to grow, and most people aren't. It's not going to just happen by dumb luck or osmosis.
You take a look. I talk about lean manufacturing and 5S and all that good stuff, but the forms of waste to me, and untapped talent, that S of skills, you can't leave that bucket untouched. You got to invest into your people. You got to promote the right people. You have to have an eye out for who has that leadership trait in them, and who's willing to have the courage to explore that and really take it. Because I have to say, I don't think it's for everybody. Not everybody wants to be in this type of a role, and that's understandable. It's okay to want to do a good job and be a master at what your discipline is,
Mm-hmm.
and to grow in ways in which you're creating mastery which is one of our key words that we try to use a lot in here is creating mastery within the individual's role. And for a lot of people, that is the focus, is just create that mastery. But for others, it's being a leader, stepping up the plate and trying to be influential to others to try to get the most out of the leverage that we can there. So yeah, I would say that the investment that they put into our training, I worked for General Electric for 10 years before this, and they have deeper pockets, but there was not the attention to the individual training that you receive working for Peckham Industries. I
Hmm.
tell people all the time that I really truly feel this is one of those diamond in the rough companies. You don't just see a ton where, I used to have the Sunday icks coming to work when I worked for other companies in the past. And I just don't really get them here because I enjoy what I do. I know they support us. I know that they do everything they can to promote our own individual growth while they grow themselves. And it really feels like, there's no one out there perfect, but it feels like the balance that I've always been looking for. And I think that, the grass, sometimes people think the grass is greener on the other side, but I've told my mother plenty of times, like, I don't know if I'll be moving back to Ohio anytime soon because I don't know that I'll find an employer I like as much as this one. So I think it just is a testament just to, I've been around, I've seen a lot of what there is to offer, and Peckham really does. When I used to always say that a lot of companies flash words on your computer screen in front of you, integrity and dedication and these types of things, but they truly live it here, and you see it just through the way they invest into us at a plant level. The capital expense projects that we've done through the last 5 years of me being here, it's amazing to see all the new equipment that we acquired, and that when they say safety, they really promote it, but they really they walk the walk and they talk the talk as well too. So
Hmm.
like I can't tell you how many different projects I've done where I'm like, I can't believe that this is what the fifth overhead crane that I put into this facility. I would think that maybe one or two of those in a whole career would be a lot. Of 5 years, we've nearly put in five overhead new cranes, new hot water tanks. We've upgraded our boiler system. We've put in a new mixer for our plant. In our fabrication shop, new cranes, new gantry cranes outside in our yards for picking up the pieces and traveling them around the yards. I mean, the amount of investment they put into it really makes me feel like they believe in us is one of the subsidiaries of like I said, large Peckham and being under the Peckham umbrella.
Yeah. So I know we got to transition over to the Patreon side of things, and I went a little off script on you there because I want to talk about some leadership.
That's
I
fine.
guess yeah, it is. I listen. I'm such a geek for that stuff. I could talk about it all day, and I do have a couple. I'm probably going to ignore the question list I sent you and get a little deeper into that when we go over to the Patreon side. But I'm just curious. When you were talking earlier, and what prompted me to say how regimented you were and disciplined. And I'd love to hear about any strategies you have because obviously every single day there, and you mentioned it too. There's curveballs. There's things you weren't expecting. They're trying to steal your time, steal your attention, pull you down a different direction with your day, and especially for the small business owners, it's nonstop, right? So I'm just curious when you roll into a day and you've got a plan for that day, and things start to happen that are pulling you away from that plan. How do you deal with that? Do you have strategies that help you get back to your plan, or do you just leave the rest of the plan to the next day? Like, what does that look like for you?
So as I mentioned before, I keep an Outlook calendar for myself that I try to keep pretty detailed. It is my, every hour I take a look at it to make sure what's next. But in general, my answer to this would be is I'm a big believer in leadership standard work. So that's an agreement between you and whoever you're subordinate to, right?
Hmm.
And so I have a bunch of different managers that report into me, and we have a leader standard work for all those. And it shouldn't be overwhelming. This is not supposed to be some homework task, but what this is it's an agreement between you and a supervisor of what are the critical things that I need to be paying attention to on my day to day, week to week, month, quarterly, whatever those time frames are that work the best to be able to spell this all out for you. But what are the things that we're agreeing upon are the priorities and focus areas for me? And, between my day-to-day schedule and what good leader standard work looks like for myself and for the others that report into me, that's how I keep us on task. It's really important to me that, like I said, back to for the third time, Covey's Cup, right? That you're prioritizing the things that are important, maybe not the most urgent, but are setting you up for future success all the time. And I think that's really important for a manager is to really understand what our priorities. A safety. Somebody. God forbid something happens safety wise, right? Well, that's going to become number one priority: taking care of our people and making sure that we're
Mhm.
documenting the incident appropriately, getting it in, reporting it in through our company. We have certain channels that we go through here. But if it's somebody just saying, "Hey, I have a problem and I want to talk about it," and my first thing is, "Are you okay? Are you safe? Are you in a good headspace?" If the answer is, "Yeah, I just need something that I thought maybe we could do a little bit better," okay, I try to fit it into a time. Take a look at my schedule. I got about a half an hour, maybe around 2:30, 3 o'clock in the day. Are you going to be around then? Okay, let's meet up then and try to pace it. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say I have an agenda today. I cannot fit that in. But it's not okay to perceive being busy just to keep things away from you. And I'm supposed to be somebody that people feel comfortable coming to and that does make time for them. So I try to make sure that I'm doing that at all points in time. Like I said, I'm here to serve a bunch of people that work in this facility, that have their own concerns, right? And they have their own narrow focus. And I need to make sure that I'm showing them that I do care about them and their focus areas too. So I have my own. And I just, like I said, between that daily schedule and a good standard or leader standard work format, I know what are the important things that are non-negotiable for me. And I know that the areas where I could say, hey, I could probably push that tomorrow, or I could push that to next month. Um, and I just try to stay structured with that. And I think a lot of it just comes from being, speaking very clearly to people, being kind, being a respectful person. A lot of it just is the way that you come through and your attitude, who you are as a person. And like, I don't think that anyone thinks that I'm lying to them if I tell them, hey, I'm busy. For this today, it was, hey guys, I got this podcast going on. I really want to stay focused on it. I want to take an hour beforehand, prep through all the questions that I answered, refamiliarize myself with what you guys had put in front of me and make sure that this is a focus for an hour for me. So that's my secret sauce. I don't
I
think it's
love it.
anything special. I just, it's what I do. And being a positive person, I can't tell you how much I think being a positive person and having a good attitude is important in this life. I know it's not something that people in maybe the HR world like to not measure, and it can get kind of touchy feely, but and just being a pleasant person to be around really does wonders for you as a manager, as a laborer, as any role out there in society. Being a pleasant person to be around just makes it so much easier, and I honestly think that's a big part of it. One thing I did want to talk about here too is I have this connection point. I actually, for this, I was going to tell people it's called this section is going to be called the power of food. But I kind of have this thing where, kind of Anthony Bourdain. I used to watch a show on TV all the time when I was younger. And I've always, I had a cook, my mother and my grandmother were amazing cooks. And I always found that utilizing food to make connection points with people, I have broke some of the toughest barriers in relationships with food. There's a gentleman that I worked with when I was working at General Electric in Dover, Ohio, in a molybdenum wire drying plant. And this gentleman, he was a tough cookie to crack. I would say it was about a year and he still just would not really seem to give me the time of day. But I knew that he, had a Polish background, Polish Hungarian background. And one day I was talking about to the other guys in our morning meeting about bringing in some food and whatnot. And I asked him, I said, do you like halushki? And he said, I love halushki. He's like, one of my favorite meals that my grandmother used to make was halushki. And I was like, I'm bringing some in, so I'll make sure there's some for you. And I hand delivered him a bowl of it. And I'll tell you, just that right there was enough that like we started having conversations and like we started connecting a little bit more person to person, right? And over time, and that wasn't the first time or last time I fed him after that either. So I was like, hey, this worked. I'm going to do it again, right? So a month later, we cooked something else or whatever and brought it in. And I used to make big, huge pots of meatballs and bring them in and do meatball sliders. I'd crush them up, and I'm pretty proud of my meatball recipe. But just that connection with food helps break down that sometimes those barriers that are there. I always tell people like they'd be like, "Oh, write it off. Put it on the company credit card." No, I want people to know it's from me. This is from
Mhm.
me. I cook it at my home. I put my heart and my passion into it, and I want to share it with you. And just that, and then the conversations that you get to have with people, I've had so many relationships that, you started out as, somebody disgruntled, or I've worked in a couple of union plants and whatnot. And I've broken so many barriers by the use of connecting with people over food. And then you start flourishing these great relationships with people. And I just think that it's something that, my first manager I worked for, the MSO of the shop, used to tell me all the time, go across the street and go buy like 500 fish dinners. And I would go and I would have to go get the orders of everybody, and maybe they wanted chicken wings or a fish dinner or whatever. And then I'd have to go hand deliver it to him too. And he made that be my task, but it got me to know people uh, intimately, right? What do you like? And what's your background? And like these conversations would start happening. And it was one of the best things that subliminally somebody ever gave me advice is like, feed the people. It'll help you. And I've leveraged that everywhere I've went, and I can't tell you how many times I've like I said 100 times at this point is I'm breaking these barriers down, and then you really can start getting to the meat and potatoes of what are your objectives, and how is this relationship, and what do you want to do moving forward to improve all of this stuff. So yeah,
That's amazing. I love that, man.
good.
Absolutely love it. I know we're going to jump over to the Patreon side here, talk a little leadership stuff, and maybe actually ask you some questions off of the outline. But before we do that, Rick, if people want to learn more about Peckham, they want to learn more about opportunities that you guys have, whether it's at your plant or somewhere else, how do they find you guys?
So Peckham does have a Facebook, and I'd say it's a great area to get to see the wide breadth of services that we provide for our communities and for customers. So check us out on Facebook. I am on LinkedIn as well too. So anybody that wants to jump on there, Richard T. Engelhardt, and you'll find me on there. And more than willing to connect. And anybody that would need anything, any advice or anything like that in their leadership career, or have a short story to share with me as well that can help me learn. I'm really into networking and connecting with people. So that's where they can find me, and that's where they can learn a little bit more about Peckham Industries and Daily Precast.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks again for jumping on the time. Don't go anywhere. We're going to jump over to the Patreon side. And of course, everybody, thanks so much for listening. We really appreciate your listenership, your viewership, the support you give us, and you'll hear from us next week. Thanks, everybody.
Appreciate your time.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, 5 Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peoplease, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.